to the channel. My name is Gonzii and today we are going to be reacting to the worst trades in NFL history by Benchwarmer Brand, one of my favorite content creators, man. Go follow him if you enjoy NFL stuff. He does phenomenal comedy stuff with all the teams. Bro dishes out smoke to everyone. But yeah, man, the combine just finished. I really enjoyed this year's combine like I did last year. And yeah, man, this seemed like the perfect time to drop this video. Without further ado, let's go, man. Let's react to the worst trades in NFL history, bro.
What are the worst trades in NFL history? With the Broncos benching Russell Wilson for the rest of
they cut Russell Wilson today.
The season, they have cemented their trade with the Seahawks.
They released him today, actually.
Russ coined the phrase Broncos country, let's ride, and now the only thing he'll be riding is pine. But is the Russ trade the worst trade in NFL history? Let's rank the top 10. At number 10, the Houston Oilers trade Steve Largent to the Seattle Seahawks.
Ooh, Steve Largent is wide receiver. Played for the Seahawks. Hall of Famer. I know that for sure. Yeah.
For an 8th round.
I didn't know you
gave up a little too quick with this one. They drafted Largent with a 4th round pick in 1976, only to trade him away a few months later for an 8th round pick. Why? Because they were just unimpressed with him as a player. In fact, they would have avoided this list altogether if they just stuck with their original plan, which was to cut him. They would have been on another list of maybe biggest mistakes in NFL history, but hey, at least they would have avoided the worst trades one. Instead, here they are. And here Steve Largent is as a top 20 receiver of all time and an NFL Hall of Famer. In fact, when he retired, Largent was the league's all-time leader in receiving yards.
Oh, I did not know that.
Later on by the Jerry Rices and Larry Fitzgeralds of the world. But this wouldn't be the last time a Houston franchise traded a great receiver for basically nothing, although it's technically a different Houston franchise, but whatever. At number 9, we've got the Bill O'Brien masterclass that signified the end of the Texans as we knew them. DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. The full details of the trade were DeAndre Hopkins and a 2020 4th round pick for David Johnson, a 2020 2nd round pick, and a 2020 4th round. Coming off back-to-back division titles in 2018 and 2019, O'Brien said, you know what we should do? Trade away our all-pro receiver. What happened next? Well, the Texans went 4-12, and it would be the last time we would ever see Bill O'Brien or Deshaun Watson on a Texans sideline ever again. Now, a lot of the worst trades in NFL history look that way because of hindsight. We get to see how it all plays out, and it becomes clear just how badly one team fleeced another. But this deal was bad even without hindsight. Trading your star quarterback's #1 target for a running back who was clearly on the decline made no sense then, and it makes no sense now. Granted, in hindsight, the fall of the Texans was inevitable anyway, because even though this terrible 2020 season is what made Deshaun Watson request a trade, the legal issues that popped up shortly after would have likely necessitated a trade anyway, and we'll get to that one in a few minutes. At number 8, it's the Chicago Bears and their draft trade for arguably the worst quarterback on an NFL roster right now, Mitch Trubisky. In 2017, the Bears traded their number 3 overall pick,
guess who went number 10 on this draft?
3rd rounder, a 4th rounder, and a 2018 3rd rounder to move up one spot and take their quarterback of the future. The only problem is he ended up being terrible. Look, this trade has to be on this list because it was a high-profile deal involving multiple draft picks for what was supposed to be a franchise quarterback.
Patrick Mahomes went 10th.
But overall, I don't think it was that bad. People look back at this deal a lot more unfavorably because Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes were selected shortly after Trubisky, but Trubisky was pretty much the consensus #1 quarterback by the time draft day arrived. Whether that was warranted or not is a different discussion, but the Bears weren't doing anything crazy with who they picked. And as far as what they gave up, yeah, it was a solid handful of draft picks, but it was nothing compared to some of the other deals we'll talk about. It was only 1 1st rounder and then a bunch of mid-round picks, and yes, one of those mid-round picks did turn out to be Fred Warner, but let's be honest, the Bears scouts aren't as good as the 49ers scouts. Chicago wasn't ending up with Fred Warner anyway. Number 7, the Chargers trade up to draft Ryan Leaf. Everyone talks about Ryan Leaf being one of the biggest busts in NFL history, but no one really talks about the trade the Chargers made to draft him in the first place. In 1998, the Chargers traded 2 1st-round picks, a 2nd round pick, and 2 players to the Cardinals so that they, much like the Bears in 2017, could move up 1 spot to number 2, ensuring that they would get one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the draft. They didn't really care who, just whoever went number 1, they would gladly take the other guy. Well, Peyton Manning went number 1, becoming one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Ryan Leaf went number 2, and went on to become a financial consultant. Not right away, that was in 2004 after he sucked at football for a few years, but yeah, didn't work out. Luckily, the Chargers found a pretty good quarterback shortly after, but this still has to stay. Number 6, the Packers trade for John Hadl. We associate the Packers with having Hall of Fame quarterbacks basically all the time, but after Bart Starr retired and before Brett Favre came along, there was about 20 years of uncertainty at the quarterback position. One of the guys they turned to was 34-year-old John Hadl. The Packers acquired him from the Rams midway through the 1970 season for 2 1st-round picks, 2 2nd-round picks, and a 3rd round pick. A massive draft pick haul. For a guy that was completely
Bro, that deal is wild. 2 1st rounders, 2 2nd rounders. Are they smoking crack? bro.
Washed up and ended up
What?
only being on the team for a year and a half. In
Nah,
his last
man,
year
no,
in Green Bay,
what?
Hadel
It's
started
wild.
13 games and threw 6
Jesus, my
touchdowns to
eyes.
21
I need to sleep, man.
interceptions. To make matters
Jesus.
worse, the Packers probably should have known Hadel was declining, considering the last game he started for the Rams before being traded to the Packers was against the Packers, where he went 6 for 16 for 59 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and got benched. But Green Bay saw that performance and said, hey, let's trade away all our draft picks for this guy. He's the one. But look, there's being reckless with your draft picks. And then there's number 5. The Saints trade their entire draft class for Ricky Williams in 1999. Of all the trades throughout history, this is the one that I just can't even fathom happening in the age of social media. If we all picked up our phones to a notification that a team traded every single...
It had to be the Saints, bro.
NFL Twitter would explode. But that's what the Saints
not
did,
winning
trading all their
anything
picks
for the next
in
like 20
1999
years
draft,
because
along
of the
with their
situation
first
they're
and third
in.
round picks in 2000 to Washington for the number 5 overall pick and the right to select Ricky Williams. And it didn't work out. For either side, really. The Saints went 3-13 and Williams' first season, and head coach Mike Ditka, who orchestrated the trade, got fired. And although Williams was putting up good numbers, he only lasted 3 seasons in New Orleans before getting traded to Miami. Washington, meanwhile, did essentially nothing with the 8 draft picks they got from New Orleans. So all things considered, this trade was pretty brutal for both sides. Guys, once again, I have to give a shout out to our friends over at Jack Links for sponsoring this video. They have supplied me with so much beef jerky to get through this season.
Get your
I really
bag.
like 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. It's hard to get much worse than trading 3 first-round picks for a guy who essentially never saw the field. Now, the Niners made this trade over a month before the 2021 draft, and there's been a lot of speculation that Mac Jones was their original target when they made this trade, and that they just got wrapped up in the Trey Lance hype in the month leading up to it. Either way, Trey did not pan out in San Francisco, and got traded to Dallas just 2 years later for only a 4th-round pick. 3 first-rounders for a guy whose career basically never got off the ground is wild, and the only reason the Niners don't get more flack for it is because Brock Purdy came along and saved the day. But even though San Francisco gave up all those picks, at least they didn't take on a huge financial burden to go along with it.
That's
like
nice.
number 3, the Broncos trade for Russell Wilson.
Oh man, this is why not even the trade itself, it's ridiculous. They gave draft picks plus like 2-3 players, and then they gave him an extension that's gonna have a cap hit of like $40 million this year after they cut him. It's such a bad deal, honestly.
Shortly after missing out on Aaron Rodgers, the Broncos wasted no time going after a different franchise quarterback. They traded 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick, along with Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris for Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick. And immediately after, the Broncos signed Wilson to a 5-year, $245 million extension, about to eat all that. When Russ arrived in Denver, he still had 2 years left on his Seattle contract, which means he's about to be cut before that extension has even kicked in. At the time, it seemed like Russ was the missing piece for a Broncos roster ready to win a Super Bowl. Turns out, all he was about to do was financially handicap the franchise for years to come, all while the Seahawks stay competitive and turn those draft picks into impact players. Broncos country, you tried. Number 2, the Vikings acquire Herschel Walker from the Dallas Cowboys
to beat Mahomes. Wild.
The terms of this deal are jarring to look at, but essentially, the Vikings gave Dallas all the fuel they needed to spark their dynasty run in the 90s. Dallas got 5 players, 3 first-round picks, and 3 second-round picks. And some of the players those picks turned into include Hall of Famer Emmitt Smith, Pro Bowler Darren Woodson, and Pro Bowler Russell Maryland. Now, the Vikings thought Herschel Walker was their missing piece to winning a Super Bowl. Instead, they never even made the playoffs in their seasons with Walker, while the Cowboys went on to win 3 Super Bowls in the next 7 years. Without this trade, the Cowboys may have never become a dynasty, and Cowboys fans of today might be a lot less obnoxious. Thanks, Minnesota. And number 1, the Cleveland Browns trade for Deshaun Watson.
Oh yeah, the worst trade of all time.
The Walker deal should still be number 1, but the circumstances surrounding the Deshaun
wild.
Watson trade just really put it over the top.
Why would you do
Deshaun
this?
demanded a trade out of Houston, but in the midst of that demand, got accused of being basically the worst human being of all time. And the Browns said, hey, we don't care, we want that guy, and we'll give you a ton of draft picks to get him. 3 first-rounders, a 3rd-rounder, and a 4th-rounder. And we're gonna pay him the most guaranteed money anyone has ever paid a quarterback. By a lot. So with all that, he better play well. He didn't play well. At first, people just assumed he was rusty because of all the time away from football, but he didn't look any better in his 2nd season as a Brown either, before ultimately going down for the season with a shoulder injury. So now the Browns have a quarterback who is a shell of his former self. They owe him a total of $230 million guaranteed, and they don't have a 1st-round pick until 2025. Good deal, Cleveland. You're lucky the rest of your team is good. But there you go. The worst trades in NFL history. Let me know in the comments if you think any other trade should be on this list, or if you'd change my order in any way. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already.
So yeah guys, there you have it. That was the top 10 of the worst trades in NFL history, according to Benchwarmer Brand, one of the greats on YouTube right now. Go subscribe to him if you enjoyed the video. And yeah man, that Deshaun Watson trade is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire existence of sports, bro. All the problems off the field. He spent, at that time when the trade got done, 1 year away from football because he did not want to play for the Texans anymore. Then he got suspended for like another year almost to like play 2-3 games. And then he got hurt. Bro, you owe this man $230 million guaranteed. Guaranteed. Wild. But yeah guys, thank you so much for watching the video, man. Hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Before you go though, don't forget that we enjoy on the channel, man. Come on bro, keep God first as always. Drink water, go tell somebody you love them, and if you're here, you know what to do, man. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. My name is Gonzii, and see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.